All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Technology Source Virtual Roundtable. I'm Rob Olson, the Chief Revenue Officer with Technology Source. Every month, we bring to you different technologies that are either very timely or very unique and beneficial to our client partners. For those of you who aren't familiar with Technology Source, we're a technology advisory firm that works alongside your IT team to create best-in-breed solutions. Technology Source represents over 500 providers in managed IT services, cybersecurity, telecom, and mobility services. We work closely with our client partners to reduce their operational expenses and improve efficiencies while helping to deliver an outstanding experience for their customers. A little bit about our guest today. We got a very special guest. Pat Hannon has joined us. He's the CEO of CloudScale 365. And Pat is an operating professional with 31 years of technology experience providing sales leadership and operational management to teams in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Pat has demonstrated skills in organizing and directing national sales organizations. I was a part of one of those, building effective sales channels and creating strategic relationships. Pat's impressive resume includes roles such as SVP at Earthlink, Chief Revenue Officer at Global Capacity, Board of Directors at Seacoast Telecommunications. And for the last 9 years, Pat has been the CEO at CloudScale 365. So really excited to have you here, Pat. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about CloudScale. You've been there for 9 years now. Maybe give us a quick overview of that company and what you've been able to accomplish there.
Sure. So thanks, Rob. So we have 3,400 customers worldwide. We have 2 divisions, almost 80 employees. Our greatest claim to fame is that our average customer's been with us 11 and a half years. And, we strive for workflow, not widget, with our customer base. What that means is we want to optimize your environment with the changing times, both to save you money, as well as make your employees as productive as possible. So our 2 divisions, our MSP that looks after our DaaS platform, and our managed service provider, which looks after your day-to-day services, such as truck rolls, Office 365, et cetera, have very, functional experience, as a company. And today, we handle 5,000 tickets a month, 3,400 inbound phone calls on shore, and approximately, average handle time of about 11 and a half minutes. That's a long-winded way of saying, your IT, whether you're 5 users or you're 500 users, we're here today, to see if we can help optimize and be a partner, or we can't. And, we want to pick the best solution for you. And that's the goal. We're never going to try to sell you anything.
Yeah, and that's why, we lean on CloudScale as one of our premier vendors. I mean, we like the fact that you answer your phone. Biggest challenge we run into with companies in your space is they don't answer the phone. So I don't think I've ever waited more than a minute for you to pick up. Your staff and yourself are always looking to educate our client partners as opposed to sell, which is our model as well. So it's proven to be a great partnership, and we're glad you can be here today. 5 critical reasons businesses need desktop services now. There's so many things that our business owners are challenged with. You look at work from home, which has become the norm now. You look at the need to bring your own device, and the fact that employees want to use a device they're comfortable with, and which ends up being beneficial to the company in the long run. But anywhere, anytime, performance, being able to work from a coffee shop, the business continuity aspects of desktop. So all these things have become very important. If we can, maybe you can, give us a little bit of the differences between traditional desktop, VDI, and desktop as a service, with traditional desktop being the really kind of bare bones. I've got a server, I've got my, my MS 365 on that, and I've got a couple of applications, and I'm trying to manage, patches and software updates and migrations and new employees that are coming on. And There's a lot going on in the traditional desktop. And in fact, I saw a stat recently that showed that 47% of the time spent by SMB IT departments is just taking care of network issues and network challenges. So
Right.
you can walk us through that briefly and just kind of give us a.
Sure. So I mean, Rob, you nailed it great. I mean, look, the traditional desktop is still the elephant in the room, right? It represents pretty much 80% of the global IT market, right? And the good news is just like, our phone systems migrated to VoIP systems, we're seeing much more heavier cloud adoption, um, sort of in the traditional desktop space. The greatest mover of that is, your basic server to SharePoint environment, right? Which is included with your Office 365. And setting it up properly, you need a company like ours that's a Microsoft Tier 1 CSP that can actually, manage that migration. The whole idea, both from a security, efficiency, and quite frankly, productivity, because of things that break or have to be replaced,
Right.
is to get as many of the elements in the network off the local network and into more of a cloud environment. And that's everything from your patching, your security updates, your network updates, your network maintenances. All of that today can be managed remotely. We currently do it. We touch over 10,000 endpoints today for over 30,000 users. And it's what keeps, traditional desktop, is what keeps, an entire industry of small break fix guys alive. What's great about moving to a managed service provider is we optimize all of this in a very cost-effective, budgetable way. That said, you look at the next 20%, which is VDI and desktop as a service. Now, VDI has its applications. If you have a large hospital in the middle of nowhere, you're never going to be able to make desktop as a service work. You're going to need to use, a virtual desktop where you have the hosts locally that store the data, and you can access those hosts on the local area network or even remoting in, right? It's a secure environment. It allows for single host provisioning, which makes it a very simple way to manage users. It's also a very good security way to manage users. In the traditional desktop world, we'd have to put, to your point about your phone or your iPad or your laptop, we'd have to put mobile device management application on it to be, truly secure. In the VDI world, we don't have to do that. So we wipe it locally versus wiping it remotely. And so it's kind of like, you've got a castle and you've got a moat, that old strategy. VDI makes itself, more along the lines of, next generation VPN type services with ZTNA and desktop as a service where you can limit your applications. It's just it's a more robust and secure way to handle remote users.
Yeah, and in fact, we had a situation with one of our remote users using a laptop. Her dog jumped up, knocked the laptop off her lap onto the ground, and she picked up her iPad and was back at it. We weren't happy. We had to buy a new laptop, but it could have been a lot worse if she stored all that data on her laptop. We would have lost all the customer quotations, all her notes that would have been on that local laptop. Thank God with desktop, it was now in the cloud. So no,
right. And your CapEx cost goes down for your endpoints when you're in that desktop as a service of you still need a laptop.
Right.
You still need to do basic security on it. But you don't have to do the things you have to do when it's, that is, to your point, the device, right?
Yes.
And then lastly, onboarding and offboarding employees is much more efficient in a VDI or desktop service versus a traditional desktop,
And
right?
we saw some numbers on that we'll share with everyone on this call in just a bit, and they were astronomical. I was really
Yeah, no, absolutely. Provisioning up and down is extremely fast. You know, imaging is quite a bit faster, even though, you know, the traditional desktop has come a long way. It's still not as efficient as a centralized environment.
We're going to get into the top 5 reasons here in a minute, but I think for someone to call here, this next question is kind of important. And you touched on this a little bit with VDI and the need for low latency and internet bandwidth, right? But what's the best way for business owners to determine which one of these three is best for them? I know you mentioned to me that in the past, if you have more than 50 users, you know, VDI and desktop makes sense. But can you maybe walk us through what you'd recommend to various
It
customers?
depends, right? It depends on the types of applications. So if you're doing heavy duty GIS, you know, or looking at radiological images or um, uh, high, what I'll say is high compute required solutions, VDI and desktop or service are not your optimal way to go. They're just not. That's why a lot of construction firms don't use it, because they're in a trailer. They might have like a Comcast connection. They can't get to that server and get that image down faster. The labor is not as productive. Whereas if they have a server locally that is hybrid to a cloud environment, a little bit different twist on it, right? You can actually copy a lot of that imagery down to that server locally to eliminate, you know, the latency between the trailer and the cloud. You know, that's an example where I would say you want to be careful about, you know, what it depends on your business. If you're a bunch of roaming salespeople, you can use anything, right? Desktop works, right? Doesn't, you know, it doesn't work great. If you have a lot of traveling salespeople, you know, usually in those solutions, we recommend the Office 365 cloud piece because it just works without VDI, and it makes it very simple. For a hospital, if it's not on a local network, we wouldn't do it. However, if you're placing orders in a system like SAP, Oracle, ERP deployments, VDI is a phenomenal solution. And it just depends for the business owner. And what we recommend is, and we do, I'm sure other MSPs do it, is you know, a free review with you to go through, you know, what's best for your company and what's optimal. And then from the CFO perspective, you know, what are you spending an employee a month? You know, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? You know, what are you trying to get SOC 2 compliant? Trying to get NIST 171 compliant? It just depends what you're trying to do as a business.
Yeah, and Pat, I've seen calls with you where you've actually said to somebody, I think you should stay with what you're using today. I mean, you're not afraid to say no if there's not a fit or an area you can add value. And I think that's one of the things we really appreciate is that honesty and integrity. Getting to the 5 critical reasons, Forrester produced a report back in September 2022, which had some really eye-opening benefits. I mean, up to that point, I think most of what we were talking about were soft cost benefits and a lot of adjectives, right? But now we can finally put some numbers to some of this stuff. And it's not surprising, but it's nice to have an organization like Forrester that did this research and is able to, you know, put some hard numbers out there. And one of the things that the report showed was that desktop as a service resulted in a 15% improvement in employee productivity. Tell us a little bit about, I mistyped this, so I should say employee productivity. Tell us a little bit about some of the ways this helps improve employee productivity.
Sure. So we've seen it high as 40%, right? I mean, it just depends on the environment. But as a blended average, that sounds about right, right? So it is so much faster to remedy a central server that's hosting all of this than it is to go out to an individual machine, remote into the machine, make sure you can get a hold of the person, right? Walk through what the issues are and then remedy it. Whereas in a desktop environment, you remedy it right there on the server. You don't have to you don't even have to talk to the user. Did you just say, what's the problem? And you literally go right into the server and you figure out what's wrong with the configuration.
Right.
Be anything from a corrupted profile to, anything along those lines. What's great about it from a security perspective is if a known actor takes somebody's laptop and is, has to qualify to get the, into the server environment, when you talk about, two-factor authentication, this allows us to log and view. So if the employee does not have access to the other file servers, in their corporate laid down security process, it's very quick for us to eliminate and isolate the issue and ring fence the breach. So the outside, looking in, it's more about, faster IT response, more uptime for the employee
Yeah,
in a
we,
secure
for the
environment.
productivity side of it, we had an insurance company we were working with, Pat, and they have their data on the server and they have these agents running around and, look, we live in an Amazon world where you can buy shoes at 1 o'clock in the morning and they're here the next day, right? And people are now used to that. We're in a scrolling society. There's no longer any patience. So they wanted to be able to produce a quote from a truck, from a coffee shop, from an office. And that employee can bring an iPad or an iPhone or a laptop in and have access to the network, have it be secure, have it be a familiar device that they don't have to learn, and produce that quote. And so not only is it more productive, but you're really responding to the needs of the market, which is now. It's a now society, right? People don't want to wait. And I found that that's a key benefit for me as I travel and I've got to get things done. And I'm much more productive using desktop. The only disadvantage with desktop, of course, is in an airplane, I can't get access to my network. So, but that's a small.
That is a challenge.
The other thing we saw was an improvement, 15% improvement in efficiency, IT efficiency by year 3. And, again, big number for IT departments that are struggling to do more with less. I always laugh because there's never enough budget. There's never enough people, but the IT folks carry all of the responsibility of everything working right. Help us understand how desktop as a service, or DaaS as people refer to it.
Yeah, sure. No, so we
IT departments improve their efficiencies. What's driving that 15%?
So yeah, we just talked to a $1.6 billion company that had 160 applications, sitting out there in a traditional desktop world, and their licensing costs were out of control. All right. You're talking about 1,800 employees, publicly traded company. Their solution is not going to scale, not going to work. So we were brought in initially to advise, scope, what have you. And in their particular case, we did choose VDI over DaaS because it was such a large contingent in one place. It was silly to pay for DaaS when it was much simpler for them, to go to this environment with their offices all over the country. That said, DaaS simplifies the actual physical requirements for an IT department that take a lot of time, right? You got to send your laptop off to Dell for warranty work, or you're waiting for them to show up at your office. The DaaS, again, it goes back to the earlier example. When a centralized environment, we can tweak that desktop without ever talking to the user and fix it and remedy the problem. So that ensures their uptime. And in a larger company, it is much more efficient, right? So it's really a question of, how worked is that IT department? Is this most effective? What are the business drivers? And usually we'll go DaaS, we'll go VDI, depending on the application, such as dental. They really only work with Citrix. The Azure desktop is a fantastic product. It's very easy to use. It's always there. There's always a copy. It's fast, except on an airplane.
Except that.
But from an efficiency perspective, a lot of IT companies like this for scale.
Yeah, it eliminates a lot of the maintenance that IT organizations do. You can build images for your different user groups, right? So that you have your different packages of applications and software for each one that's already built and ready to go. You're standardizing the settings for your user groups. You're creating stronger security protocols, such as authentication services. And then the big one, obviously, is, and you mentioned this, alleviating traditional server, operating system, and network and database management. That's very time consuming to keep up with. And security has become, we're going to talk about security in a little bit, but security has become a big challenge for companies to try and manage logs and manage patches and updates. And I can't tell you how many times those things get missed because it's just overwhelming. So,
well, here's the other thing, that I would say that's key to an executive team. Going to your desktop as a service, you are able to change your workflow much faster than you can in the old sort of 80% world, where you got to learn how to use this thing or use that thing. You can spin this up and deliver it much faster in this environment than you could in the old traditional environment. And that, for a big company that needs to be nimble and execute, is worth the investment and time to go to a platform such as this.
Right. You have to move quick. Tomorrow happens really fast, and the customers don't want to wait. Now society for sure. Again, coming back to the IT efficiency, this kind of fits under that umbrella. Item number 3 here is 60% faster onboarding per employee.
I probably challenge Forrester on that number. I think that's a little bit extreme. It is quick. Don't get me wrong for a second. You click on, click off, but there's no argument that it's faster. Turning up an employee is a lot of things. A lot of them require hand-holding, regardless of whether you have it in the cloud or you have it on a laptop delivered to them with a tutorial. But it's all about how you do it. We work with different customers different ways. Obviously, we work hand in glove with HR departments because that's necessary. As an MSP or cloud hoster, this is one of the decision trees that you need to make sure when you're looking at buying these kinds of services, that you ask the provider that's bidding on your services is, how do you work with our HR department? Every customer of ours has an onboard, offboard policy in our IT glue environment, where we actually manage, there's a set of rules. It doesn't matter who supports the client. It matters what their process is. It's embedded with ours as a partner. And that's always going to be, a much more successful event than just time for onboarding.
Well,
But
that's such a great.
I will say it is much easier in a VDI DaaS environment.
No, but the HR point is a critical piece of it, making sure that you're meeting their requirements as well on all this, because HR has now become the pseudo legal department for many companies.
Yes.
And you could do it right? So setup is significantly streamlined. As you mentioned, it's more easily scalable, right? And it features an interface that's easy to use for our IT staff when they're trying to make changes or report issues. So we like it. It's helpful for our organization. So item 4 here is a 20% decrease in the number of help desk tickets.
That's about right.
How does it impact IT trouble tickets? How does desktop?
Because computers break. Okay, they break. Outlook profiles get corrupted, right? You might have to re-image a machine if there's a corruption issue, right? So in VDI, the image is sitting on a central server. In the traditional world, it's sitting on the desktop. And there's something about the desktop. It wasn't updated, it was dropped, my dog jumped on it, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's related to that device, and 20% is right on the number, no question about it.
Yeah, no, it's a big number. And an even bigger number is a 50% decrease in the cycle time to resolve these tickets. Like how is desktop making it so much easier and impacting the cycle?
So okay, I mean, again, aggressive number, but I understand where it's coming from. In a VDI environment, your environment is hard coded. If you wanted to add Spotify to your desktop, it wouldn't allow you to do that, as an example, or Pandora, or any number of things, right? In this environment, that is your environment, period. So you have less variables being entered into the business equation. And so that is a huge piece of it. That's why security is tighter.
Control over that desktop and what's happening.
Control. Your visibility is 100%. You can see everything going on. It's just, it is why so many of the big financial services firms leverage this type of environment, because there's logging, there's visibility, the ability to, to track, the ability to archive for, organizations like HIPAA and FINRA and other processes that need to be logged. That is what the impact to cycle time is, if that makes sense.
No, that's great stuff. Look, we've seen massive growth in the cybersecurity challenges for our customers. We've seen what happened with ransomware recently, with MGM as well as Caesar's Palace. I think the MGM reported $100 million in business impact, with 10 million in consulting fees for remediation. One of the key things about desktop is security. And if you can kind of walk us through some of that, I mean, virtualization is a key part of, protecting yourself against ransomware.
Yeah, so you do have to do a basic antivirus on your desktop. We recommend an EDR or an MDR type solution on the endpoint, such as Huntress or SentinelOne. Huntress, SentinelOne, or ThreatLocker. But once that's done, and as long as the Microsoft updates are completed, that's pretty much what you need. I mean, to ensure the environment. But they do, but from your core, like your customer personal information, your whatever, that does not reside locally on the laptop. So that is protected in the hardened environment in the cloud. Though I believe MGM was a VDI environment that actually got hacked. So, that's the reason to put the security on the DaaS.
Yeah, I tell you this, the biggest challenge in security, obviously there's all the patches and changes and staying up on all the things you're supposed to be doing with logs. But, the other big challenge we're running into now, CyberSeek just posted that there's 573,000 cybersecurity openings where people can't hire the expertise they need. And that number is going to supposedly go to 2 million by 2025. So I think it becomes an issue where moving to a managed service provider, Gartner had a quote that said, nobody can manage security. No one's got the resources, the personnel to make this work the way they need it to. You need to rely on a managed service company. And I think that brings us back to desktop as another way to manage security, probably a little bit more efficiently using a managed service provider such as.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, we manage a lot of security for a lot of people you see on the news and today, and we have for years. And what I would tell you is there are processes, there are platforms, there are, the trick is to get good at a few and they all do the same thing, right? Some people like CrowdStrike, and some people like Huntress, and some people like Kaseya, and, ConnectWise Manage, and all the different, flavors of it. What I would tell you is, anybody can buy a car. Not everybody can drive, a stick shift left-handed, right? And I say it like that because we see MSPs that sometimes take on everything and they never get great at anything, right? They're great generalists. We focus on a few things, keep our customers secure. Their insurance company has always signed off on it, and we have thousands of customers. It's good practice. We also partner with three, fairly reputable, outside ethical hack firms. TechSource actually uses some of those. We don't try to be everything to everybody, but managing your perimeters and your endpoints and all of that stuff. We love it when they come in and tell us, hey, you got a hole here, or you got a hole there. It's great. It's good practice. And that's a long-winded way of saying it's a lot easier to practice with a couple IPs in a hosted environment than it is with 200 IPs in a distributed environment.
Oh, absolutely. It comes back to that control.
Right.
So I think you've probably answered this somewhat already, but hybrid work, we mentioned it earlier, is here to stay. Can users access their desktops from home, a coffee shop, or while traveling? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about the limitations if there's anything there.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. If you travel a lot and you need access to a lot of file servers and you spend a lot of time on airplanes, I do not recommend the DaaS or the VDI environment, right? I recommend the Office 365 environment, right? Because it will work from an airplane. I use it all the time. So the hybrid work is here to stay. It will be here to stay. There are ways to optimize your environment. Why do you want to have a server on-prem? That means you have to come all the way back to that server to get to those files. The better sense is there's two options. There's a thing called public cloud, where you would see Microsoft Azure, Amazon Workplace, Google Web Services, right? That's what we call public cloud. Then there's an option for private cloud. Private cloud is your rack spaces, your DigitalOceans, your Cloud Scale 365s, where we can create your private environment. We can replicate it. We can, if you need a local copy dropped in the UK or in Hong Kong, that's a very easy thing for us to spin up and deliver for you. So you have that high speed, sort of low latency connectivity versus coming all the way back to the States and then going to your premise to go to your what we call an RDS or RDP server, depending on which platform you use, which is really slow at that point. So relative to desktop as a service, as long as you have strong Wi-Fi, you can obviously use it anywhere, right? In a coffee shop, sitting in the
We saw a lot of challenges during COVID with, business owners that would send their people home with a laptop. They'd use broadband connectivity at their house. They would have a Cisco VPN, and you got to secure all that. You got to manage all that. If you're in healthcare, you got to make sure that HIPAA compliant, to maintain HIPAA compliance, that nothing's stored on that device. It's got to go back to a data center and be stored and secured and virtualized. So, the hybrid work thing, there's a lot of twists and turns to it, especially when you get into regulated industries like healthcare. You mentioned VDI and some applications work better. So in the healthcare area, what are your
Oh
thoughts?
yeah, I mean, listen, if you're just doing transcription, healthcare administration, whatever, VDI is great solution, fantastic solution, accounting, all those things. If you're staring at dental images that are big, massive files, you get a mixed environment, right? And usually in an architecture there, I think we would deploy a hybrid environment, some on-prem and then some off-prem, right? And then, even a standard practice, say we host you in Microsoft Azure, or we host you in our private cloud, we will actually back up an encrypted copy of all that data in Amazon Web Services, Google, DigitalOcean, whatever the client would prefer, right? Because you want to have, in the event of a zero-day event, also known as ransomware, you want to make sure at the end of the day, your client's data is protected, right? So for the hybrid user, usually we work with partners or with customers to set the policies that they want to allow and not allow at the onboarding of the customer. And we stick to it.
Yep. No, good stuff. Is DaaS for everyone? Are there applications?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, where DaaS is not, it's definitely not a fit. You mentioned healthcare a few times. We get that in some of the, big, huge.
It's great in finance. Those are thin clients, right? I mean, it's great. It's great in manufacturing. It's great with the exception of the images that have to go down to the automation, right? It just depends on the solution. What I recommend for everybody, whether it's CloudScale 365 or any other vendor, we do a free review. We make suggestions. You don't use us, you don't use us. We do recommend looking at different vendors and seeing what their response is, right? And how you architect it. So we do that in a quick 45-minute discovery call. And sooner or later, on average, a lot of customers like what they hear. And more importantly, getting less people visiting their prem is better, right? Dispatch is always a challenge. To your point about the 50% improvement on tickets, when you have to send somebody physically on site, that drags your support time and handle time KPIs, right? Moving your architecture or optimizing your architecture will ultimately lower your costs and increase productivity. Guaranteed.
Is there a size company that wouldn't benefit from desktop as a service?
If you're below 100 users, I'm not sure I would chase it.
Just doesn't work out from a cost perspective.
It just doesn't work out from a cost perspective.
And how do you determine whether there's an ROI? You told me a little bit about this formula earlier.
So we look at all elements of their spend, their security, their SaaS licensing, their network, their downtime. Downtime is a subjective thing. All the other elements are objective things, right? You might be using one platform or another platform. Is the goal to save money, or is the goal to say, improve productivity? You don't care about the money. The financial industry, the blended average in the United States is anywhere from $90 to $125 a month per user for IT. You'll say, no, I do it cheaper than that. All right. Did you count your prepaid licensing? How about your hardware? How about all of these things? It works out to about $125 a user. And in the medical space, it works out to about $165 a user a month. And in the financial services space, it's somewhere between $280 and $320 a month on average. And the simple rule of thumb is take the number of employees and divide by your spend annually. That will give you your budgetable figure. What that does is gives a CFO guidance to say, okay, I'm spending this. Am I spending this right? Of our customers, I'd say we probably have about 47% that we have saved 20+% annually for on average. It just depends on what they need, right? Like I said, our average customer's been with us 11 and a half years. We have 3,400 of them. So, and we've got everybody from 5 users to 790 users. You know, so everybody needs different stuff. On the higher end, it's more co-managed IT. On the lower end, we do everything.
Great. I mean, I think that's very helpful for people to try and begin to figure out whether it makes sense. And you're obviously going to be very helpful in working with them to identify not only the right solution, but whether or not this is going to provide that cost savings or that productivity improvement you're looking for. This last question is just to help our client partners that are, looking into desktop for the first time. What should they be looking for? What are some of the key things to consider when selecting a service provider such as CloudScale? Like
Sure. No.
One of the things I love about you guys, I said earlier, is the
right.
1-minute answer. And tell us a little bit about those types. Are there certifications we should consider?
No, I mean, you have to be a Citrix partner. You have to be if you're going Microsoft, you should be at least, a Microsoft Gold partner. We're a tier 1 CSP. That means that I can go into SHI or Ingram Micro and pull a user directly into our portal, our tenant, from another provider once authorized, right? That said, you got to look at the basics, right? Who are they going to pick up the phone? Are you going to have to wait 3 days for an answer, right? That is the #1 question. We have a very simple mantra at CloudScale. We answer the phone fast, right? Does your provider, what are their handle times? Those are the questions you should be asking people like me, well, if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, do they staff? A lot of them don't staff on Saturdays and Sundays and charge you outrageous, stuff. When you go with a cloud provider, they staff 24/7. So it's really a question of, are you going to support my business when I need you? And will you do it efficiently? And if they can't answer that question the way you want to hear it, they'll say they're 24/7. They'll have 3 people and they'll be supporting 200. I mean, you can do the math. There's no way in heck that they're going to be able to achieve that. So when you look for selecting a desktop service provider, I suggest, how fast do you answer the phone? Where does your infrastructure rely? Is it backed up? What core tenets of your business do we need to protect at all costs? If they can't answer those kinds of questions, then I'm not sure they're a great fit.
Yeah, what we've seen is the smaller MSPs, they tend to have fewer people available to answer the phone. You have to leave a message, and to your point, you're going to wait longer. The very large ones, you kind of, you end up leaving a message or opening up a ticket, and they got the ability to answer the phone, but you get to a low-level person who's taking information down. He's got to relay that. What we like about working with you has been, I think you're right-sized and that you're small enough to provide that great service, but large enough to handle our enterprise clients. And that's kind of the sweet spot for us in the space when we look at the types of providers we want to partner with. Last thing you mentioned to me, and I think this is an amazing offer, 90 days free. You mentioned free server migration, free training. I know that there's a 36-month agreement, and the free offer excludes Microsoft O365. Is there anything else?
Right. So sure. So we will build you an environment migrate you, train you, get your workflow and processes. You get the first 2 months free at the get-go, and you get the third month free in the second year is the way that's structured. Um, the environment, it's usually very painless. It's very easy. It's 90 days free, whether, you are migrating traditional services or if you're going to VDI DaaS, right? It just depends which version of VDI DaaS you want, that we have to just structure it correctly so that you are up and running day one, that we do the cutover. But it is a process. It does require project planning. Most MSPs charge for that. We do not. We've been in business a long time.
No, that's fantastic stuff. And for those of you on the call that would like to speak to an expert and get some more information on desktop and VDI services through companies like CloudScale 365, you can email me directly, rob.o@technologysource.com, and I will make sure that we get you in front of a subject matter expert immediately and identify as many as 3 vendors. Most of our clients have the need from a policy perspective to review 3 options. We'll arrange those 3 options for you. We'll help make those recommendations and negotiate price points for you. So take advantage of what we do to help, and reach out to me, and I'll schedule some time with you and one of our subject matter experts. Pat, anything you want to add before we close out the virtual table?
I appreciate everybody's time today, and I look forward to answering any questions at any time. We're not a high pressure set. We never try to sell you anything. You truly, happy. We do free discovery calls. It's all about what's right for your business, not what's right for mine. And I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, you've been a great guest, and you're one of our best partners. We appreciate working with you every single day and the support you bring our clients. Thanks for that. Well, that ends our virtual roundtable. We'll get together next month for our next episode, where we bring interesting solutions or solutions that are impactful to your present challenges to the market every single month. We look forward to seeing you on our next call. Thanks again, Pat, and thanks for everyone that joined us today.
Thank you.